The world's busiest port is breaking records. Factories run day and night, ships leave China packed to the edge. But just miles away, restaurants sit empty, home prices are collapsing, and families are quietly running out of money. This is Ningbo, and this is what China's economy really looks like right now. Welcome to Untold Financial Truths, the channel that goes beyond headlines, beyond propaganda, and beyond surface-level numbers. Because economies don't usually collapse in a single dramatic moment. They crack quietly inside cities, inside households, and inside confidence itself. Today's story isn't about China rising or falling. It's about something far more dangerous. An economy that looks unstoppable from the outside, but feels increasingly unbearable from the inside. To understand the contradiction inside China's economy, you have to understand Ningbo. It's a port city about 2 hours south of Shanghai, a place most people outside China have never heard of, yet one that quietly moves the global economy every single day. This is not a symbolic port. It's a machine. Around 150,000 ships pass through Ningbo every year, making it the busiest port on Earth by cargo tonnage. Tankers arrive loaded with oil and grain. Bulk carriers unload raw materials. And container ships depart, stacked high with electronics, household appliances, clothing, and electric vehicles bound for global markets. Some of the largest car carriers in the world dock here, floating parking structures with more than a dozen decks, exporting Chinese-made vehicles to Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. From the water, the scale is overwhelming. Endless cranes, endless containers, endless movement. Around the port sits a dense industrial ecosystem, factories producing everything from textiles and furniture to high-tech toilets and electric cars. This is one of the engines behind China's massive trade surplus, the proof often cited when officials point to the country's industrial strength. From a distance, Ningbo looks like a triumph, the kind of city governments showcase as evidence that the system works. The cranes never stop moving, the ships never stop arriving, the factories never sleep. But move just a few miles inland, away from the port and the export zones, and a very different China begins to appear. Along the Yong River sits Ningbo's Old Bund, once a lively cultural district filled with art galleries, restaurants, and bars, crowded with tourists and young professionals. It was designed to feel modern, creative, and confident. Today, many of those spaces sit quiet. On weeknights, singers perform to empty tables. Staff stand waiting for customers who never arrive. The buildings are still there, beautifully restored, but the energy is gone. The streets feel preserved, not alive. The reason isn't complicated. Housing prices have collapsed. Like much of China, Ningbo built aggressively during the boom years, pouring money into apartments, towers, and entire neighborhoods. Homes weren't just places to live anymore. They became financial assets, savings accounts, and symbols of security. For years, prices only moved in one direction, and families planned their lives around that assumption. When prices fell, the damage was immediate and personal. Middle-class households watched their net worth shrink almost overnight. Spending no longer felt normal. It felt risky. Dining out became optional. Home renovations stopped. Big purchases were postponed indefinitely. Discretionary spending quietly disappeared. On the outskirts of the city, construction materials markets tell the same story. Sales have collapsed by 30, 50, even 80%. Rows of parked cars line the streets, but almost all of them belong to shop owners, not customers. One store owner summed it up without emotion or drama. People simply don't have money anymore. This isn't what a sudden recession looks like. It's something slower and more dangerous. It's confidence eroding in real time. And once confidence breaks, consumption doesn't just slow down, it stops. China's property sector was never just about real estate. It was savings, it was security, it was retirement. For decades, rising property values quietly replaced social safety nets. Families accepted low bank interest, limited investment choices, and minimal welfare protections because there was one reliable assumption. Housing prices would always go up. Apartments weren't just homes. They were future college funds, emergency buffers, and retirement plans built into concrete, until they weren't. In Ningbo, fixed asset investment, once the backbone of local growth, collapsed. Spending on new apartments, office buildings, factories, and infrastructure plunged by more than 20% in a single year. That kind of fall doesn't just slow an economy, it shocks it. And more importantly, it rewrites how people think about the future. When households suddenly feel poorer, they don't just tighten their budgets, they stop planning. Life decisions get postponed, marriages are delayed, children are put on hold. Starting a business feels reckless instead of hopeful. People retreat into caution, hoarding cash or whatever form of safety they still trust. This is why traditional stimulus tools are losing their power. The problem isn't a lack of money in the system, it's a lack of belief. When confidence disappears, lower interest rates and government incentives don't spark spending. They get saved or ignored. An economy can survive slow growth. What it struggles to survive is broken expectation. When the middle class no longer believes tomorrow will be better than today, the economic engine doesn't just weaken, it stalls. And it doesn't matter how many ships leave the port each night. If people at home don't feel secure enough to plan their lives, the system stops moving forward. In most Western economies, governments respond to downturns by spending more. They build, they stimulate, they try to absorb the shock. China operates on a different structure. Local governments carry most of the responsibility for economic spending, and for years they have relied heavily on land sales and real estate activity to fund their budgets. When the property market breaks, government revenue breaks with it. That's exactly what happened in Ningbo. As real estate collapsed, municipal income dried up, and instead of stepping in to support the economy, the city was forced to pull back. Government spending fell by more than 5% last year. Before the pandemic, those budgets were growing at double-digit rates every year. The shift is not subtle. It's a reversal. Less spending means fewer infrastructure projects breaking ground. It means fewer contracts awarded to private firms. And it means fewer jobs created at precisely the moment the economy needs them most. Rather than cushioning the slowdown, local governments are becoming another source of pressure. Even the city's leadership has begun to acknowledge the strain. In a public address, Ningbo's mayor pointed to weak follow-through on major industrial projects, mounting pressure on foreign trade and consumption that, in his words, has yet to be unleashed. That phrasing is revealing. It suggests the demand still exists, but it isn't moving. And the reason it isn't moving isn't technical. It's psychological. The demand is locked behind fear. Fear of falling asset values. Fear of unstable income. Fear of making the wrong decision at the wrong time. And fear is far harder to fix than numbers on a balance sheet. From the outside, China still looks unstoppable. Export numbers remain strong. Factories are busy. Technology continues to advance. In Ningbo, products that once had to be imported, like high-tech, electronically controlled toilets, are now designed, manufactured, and sold domestically at massive scale and at extremely low cost. This is real progress. It reflects genuine gains in technical capability and industrial efficiency. But this is where the illusion begins. Factories can thrive while society struggles. Modern manufacturing no longer depends on large workforces. It depends on automation, precision, and capital. Today's factories are cleaner, faster, and far more efficient than the ones that built China's original manufacturing boom. They also employ far fewer people. So even as production rises, wages don't necessarily follow. Employment doesn't expand the way it once did, and local spending doesn't rebound. The connection between factory output and household prosperity has weakened. What used to be a reliable engine for broad-based growth has become a narrow channel that benefits capital far more than labor. This is why export success no longer guarantees domestic stability. Ports can break records while nearby neighborhoods struggle. Trade surpluses can grow while consumer confidence collapses. The numbers still look strong, but fewer people feel them in their daily lives. This is the illusion at the heart of the system. Movement without momentum, output without security. Ships leaving the port fully loaded don't mean wallets are full at home. And when an economy becomes dependent on exports that no longer lift its population, it doesn't just face economic risk, it faces a deeper imbalance that statistics alone can't hide. Even China's export engine is under pressure. The country has built enormous productive capacity, far more than the world can actually absorb. That overcapacity triggers relentless price wars, and price wars crush profit margins. When profits shrink, wages stagnate, and layoffs quietly spread through factories that were once thought unstoppable. On top of that, new U.S. tariffs under President Trump have made some markets even less profitable, cutting into margins that were already razor thin. Meanwhile, automation continues to replace human labor, making production cheaper but leaving fewer workers with income to spend. The result is a system that produces more than ever but earns less per unit. Factories hum and ports overflow, yet the wealth rarely reaches households. It's motion without momentum. Output exists, but prosperity doesn't. Efficiency thrives, but the engine of consumption stalls. The very machinery that built China's rise now highlights its structural weakness. The country can manufacture anything for the world, but cannot guarantee that its own people will benefit. And the longer this continues, the more fragile the system becomes. A society running at full capacity that, paradoxically, cannot sustain itself from within. Public protests are rare in China, but resentment doesn't vanish. It goes quiet, simmering beneath the surface. In Ningbo, forklift drivers wait at intersections, hoping for day work that may never come. Residents cultivate vegetables on unused plots of land, a silent attempt to take control over what little they can. Luxury consumption has collapsed. Even industries once considered untouchable, like the city's elite tailoring sector, which used to sell suits costing tens of thousands of dollars, now survive on far cheaper orders and fewer clients. The frustration is tangible, even if it isn't loud. One resident put it bluntly, "Everyone is complaining. People are very angry with the government." This isn't revolution. It isn't dramatic upheaval. It's erosion. Confidence, security, and social stability wear away quietly, day by day, until suddenly the system shows cracks that were always there. Ningbo isn't unique. It's a window into how pressure accumulates inside a society, how frustration spreads silently, and how an economy can appear strong while its foundations quietly weaken. And when erosion reaches its tipping point, it doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It simply changes everything. Ningbo isn't an anomaly. It's a preview of the deeper forces shaping China's economy. The country isn't collapsing, at least not yet, but it is clearly unbalanced. Exports continue to grow, yet domestic confidence lags. Factories hum with production, but consumption remains muted. Growth appears on the books, but security, the sense that people can plan, spend, and invest in their own future, is eroding. This model can keep running for years, even decades, because output is real and trade flows continue. Yet the system becomes increasingly fragile with each year that domestic demand is suppressed. Real power isn't measured by cargo tonnage or the size of a port. It isn't even measured by the speed of industrial machinery. It's measured by belief, by whether ordinary people feel confident that their future is worth investing in, that their labor, savings, and time will yield security. Without that belief, even the most productive economy risks stalling. Ningbo shows that strength on the surface can mask fragility beneath, and that fragility, if ignored, rarely announces itself before it matters. Empires don't fall with a bang. They weaken quietly, under the weight of their own contradictions. Ningbo shows us that productivity alone doesn't equal prosperity, and trade surpluses don't guarantee stability. If you want to see where the global economy is really heading, not where the headlines tell you it's going, subscribe to Untold Financial Truths. Because the most important financial stories are rarely shouted. They hide in plain sight, in markets and streets, in the confidence of everyday people. Now you've seen one of them. Now you know.